Hello, and welcome to the Short Story Workshop. In each episode, we read a short story and then discuss it. I'm here with Matt and Simone, and this week's story is Beyond Lies the Wub by Philip K. Dick. Matt, you chose this story. Can you tell us a bit about it?
I sure did pick this story, so I wanted to get a bit more science fiction into this podcast. You know, there's not that much that we've covered, and Philip K. Dick wrote some crazy stuff. His story is always a little bit strange. I knew that going in, and this one did not disappoint. It's weird and wonderful, and kind of funny and kind of disturbing, and it's just everything you could ever want.
Okay, all right. I would say I had many mixed emotions when reading this story. Here is Beyond Lies the Wub by Philip K. Dick.
They had almost finished with the loading. Outside stood the Optus, his arms folded, his face sunk in gloom. Captain Franco walked leisurely down the gangplank, grinning. "What's the matter?" he said. "You're getting paid for all this." The Optus said nothing. He turned away, collecting his robes. The captain put his boot on the hem of the robe. "Just a minute, don't go off. I'm not finished." "Oh," the Optus turned with dignity. "I'm going back to the village." He looked towards the animals and birds being driven up the gangplank into the spaceship. "I must organise new hunts." Franco lit a cigarette. "Why not? You people can go out into the veldt and track it all down again. But when we run out halfway between Mars and Earth..." The Optus went off, wordless. Franco joined the first mate at the bottom of the gangplank. "How's it coming?" he said. He looked at his watch. "We got a good bargain here." The mate glanced at him sourly. "How do you explain that?" "What's the matter with you? We need it more than they do." "I'll see you later, Captain." The mate threaded his way up the plank, between the long-legged Martian go-birds, into the ship. Franco watched him disappear. He was just starting up after him, up the plank towards the port, when he saw it. "My God!" He stood staring, his hands on his hips. Peterson was walking along the path, his face red, leading it by a string. "I'm sorry, Captain," he said, tugging at the string. Franco walked towards him. "What is it?" The wub stood sagging, its great body settling slowly. It was sitting down, its eyes half shut. A few flies buzzed about its flank, and it switched its tail. It sat. There was silence. "It's a wub," Peterson said. "I got it from a native for 50 cents. He said it was a very unusual animal, very respected." "This?" Franco poked the great sloping side of the wub. "It's a pig, a huge dirty pig." "Yes, sir, it's a pig. The natives call it a wub." "A huge pig, it must weigh 400 pounds. Franco grabbed a tuft of the rough hair. The wub gasped. Its eyes opened small and moist, then its great mouth twitched. A tear rolled down the wub's cheek and splashed on the floor. "Maybe it's good to eat," Peterson said nervously. "Well, we'll soon find out," Franco said. The wub survived the takeoff, sound asleep in the hold of the ship. When they were out in space and everything was running smoothly, Captain Franco bade his men fetch the wub upstairs so that he might perceive what manner of beast it was. The wub grunted and wheezed, squeezing up the passageway. "Come on," Jones grated, pulling at the rope. The wub twisted, rubbing its skin off on the smooth chrome walls. It burst into the anteroom, tumbling down in a heap. The men leaped up. "Good Lord," French said. "What is it?" "Peterson says it's a wub," Jones said. "It belongs to him." He kicked at the wub. The wub stood up unsteadily, panting. "What's the matter with it?" French came over. "Is it going to be sick?" They watched. The wub rolled its eyes mournfully. It gazed around at the men. "I think it's thirsty," Peterson said. He went to get some water. French shook his head. "No wonder we had so much trouble taking off. I had to reset all my ballast calculations." Peterson came back with the water. The wub began to lap gratefully, splashing the men. Captain Franco appeared at the door. "Let's have a look at it." He advanced, squinting critically. "You got this for 50 cents?" "Yes, sir," Peterson said. "It eats almost anything. I fed it on grain and it liked that. And then potatoes and mash and scraps from the table and milk. It seems to enjoy eating. After it eats, it lies down and goes to sleep." "I see," Captain Franco said. "Now, as to its taste, that's the real question. I doubt there's much point in fattening it up any more. It seems fat enough to me already. Where's the cook? I want him here, I want to find out." The wub stopped lapping and looked up at the captain. "Really, Captain," the wub said, "I suggest we talk of other matters." The room was silent. What was that? Franco said. Just now. The wub, sir, Peterson said. It spoke. They all looked at the wub. What did it say? What did it say? It suggested we talk about other things. Franco walked towards the wub. He went all around it, examining it from every side. Then he came back over and stood with the men. I wonder if there's a native inside it, he said thoughtfully. Maybe we should open it up and have a look. Oh, goodness, the wub cried. Is that all you people can think of, killing and cussing? Franco clenched his fists. Come out of there, whoever you are, come out. Nothing stirred. The men stood together, their faces blank, staring at the wub. The wub swished its tail. It belched suddenly. I beg your pardon, the wub said. I don't think there's anyone in there, Jones said in a low voice. They all looked at each other. The cook came in. You wanted me, Captain, he said. What's this thing? This is a wub, Franco said. It's to be eaten. Will you measure it and figure out? I think we should have a talk, the wub said. I'd like to discuss with you, Captain, if I might. I can see that you and I do not agree on some basic issues. The captain took a long time to answer. The wub waited good-naturedly, licking the water from its jowls. Come into my office, the captain said at last. He turned and walked out of the room. The wub rose and padded after him. The men watched it go out. They heard it climbing the stairs. I wonder what the outcome will be, the cook said. Well, I'll be in the kitchen. Let me know as soon as you're here. Sure, Jones said. Sure. The wub eased itself down in the corner with a sigh. You must forgive me, it said. I'm afraid I'm addicted to various forms of relaxation. When one is as large as I. The captain nodded impatiently. He sat down at his desk and folded his hands. All right, he said. Let's get started. You're a wub, is that correct? The wub shrugged. I suppose so. That's what they call us, the natives, I mean. We have our own term. And you speak English? You've been in contact with Earthmen before? No. Then how do you do it? Speak English? Am I speaking English? I'm not conscious of speaking anything in particular. I examined your mind. My mind. I studied the contents, especially the semantic warehouse, as I refer to it. I see, the captain said. Telepathy, of course. We are a very old race, the wub said. Very old and very ponderous. It is difficult for us to move around. You can appreciate that anything so slow and heavy would be at the mercy of more agile forms of life. There was no use in our relying on physical defences. How could we win? Too heavy to run, too soft to fight, too good-natured to hunt for game. How do you live? Plants? Vegetables? We can eat almost anything. We're very Catholic, tolerant, eclectic, Catholic. We live and let live. That's how we've gotten along. The wub eyed the captain. And that's why I so violently objected to this business about having me boiled. I can see the image in your mind. Most of me in the frozen food locker, some of me in the kettle, a bit for your pet cat. So you read minds, the captain said. How interesting. Anything else? I mean, what else can you do along these lines? A few odds and ends, the wub said absently, staring around the room. A nice apartment you have here, Captain. You keep it quite neat. I respect life forms that are tidy. Some Martian birds are quite tidy. They throw things out of their nests and sweep them. Indeed, the captain nodded. But to get back to the problem. Quite so. You spoke of dining on me. The taste, I am told, is good. A little fatty but tender. But how can any lasting contact be established between your people and mine if you resort to such barbaric attitudes? Eat me? Rather you should discuss questions with me, philosophy, the arts. The captain stood up. Philosophy. It might interest you to know that we will be hard put to find something to eat for the next month. An unfortunate spoilage. I know, the wub nodded. But wouldn't it be more in accord with your principles of democracy if we all drew straws or something along that line? After all, democracy is to protect the minority from such infringements. Now, if each of us casts one vote. The captain walked to the door. Nuts to you, he said. He opened the door. He opened his mouth. He stood frozen, his mouth wide, his eyes staring, his fingers still on the knob. The wub watched him. Presently it padded out of the room, edging past the captain. It went down the hall, deep in meditation. The room was quiet. So you see, the wub said, we have a common myth. Your mind contains many familiar myth symbols. Ishtar, Odysseus. Peterson sat silently, staring at the floor. He shifted in his chair. Go on, he said. Please go on. I find in your Odysseus a figure common to the mythology of most self-conscious races. As I interpret it, Odysseus is wandered as an individual, aware of himself as such. This is the idea of separation from family and country, the process of individuation. But Odysseus returns to his home. Peterson looked out the port window at the stars, endless stars, burning intently in the empty universe. Finally, he goes home. As must all creatures. The moment of separation is a temporary period, a brief journey of the soul. It begins, it ends. The wanderer returns to land and race. The door opened. The wub stopped, turning its great head. Captain Franco came into the room, the men behind him. They hesitated at the door. Are you all right? French said. Do you mean me? Peterson said, surprised. Why me? Franco lowered his gun. Come over here, he said to Peterson. Get up, come over here. There was silence. Go ahead, the wub said. It doesn't matter. Peterson stood up. What for? It's an order. Peterson walked to the door. French caught his arm. What's going on? Peterson wrenched loose. What's the matter with you? Captain Franco moved towards the wub. The wub looked up from where it lay in the corner, pressed against the wall. It is interesting, the wub said, that you're obsessed with the idea of eating me. I wonder why. Get up, Franco said. If you wish. The wub rose, grunting. Be patient, it is difficult for me. It stood gasping, its tongue lolling foolishly. Shoot it now, French said. For God's sake, Peterson exclaimed. James turned to him quickly, his eyes grey with fear. You didn't see him, like a statue, standing there, his mouth open. If we hadn't come down, he'd still be there. Who? The captain? Peterson stared around. But he's all right now. They looked at the wub, standing in the middle of the room, its great chest rising and falling. Come on, Franco said. Out of the way. The men pulled aside towards the door. You are quite afraid, aren't you? The wub said. Have I done anything to you? I am against the idea of hurting. All I have done is try to protect myself. Can you expect me to rush eagerly to my death? I am a sensible being like yourselves. I was curious to see your ship, to learn about you. I suggested to the native. The gun jerked. See, Franco said. I thought so. The wub settled down, panting. It put its paw out, pulling its tail around it. It is very warm, the wub said. I understand that we are close to the jets, atomic power. We have done many wonderful things with it, technically. Apparently your scientific hierarchy is not equipped to solve moral, ethical... Franco turned to the men, crowding behind him, wide-eyed, silent. I'll do it. You can watch. French nodded. Try to hit the brain. It's no good for eating. Don't hit the chest. If the ribcage shatters, we'll have to pick bones out. Listen, Peterson said, licking his lips. Has it done anything? What harm has it done? I'm asking you. And anyhow, it's still mine. You have no right to shoot it. It doesn't belong to you. Franco raised his gun. I'm going out, Jones said, his face white and sick. I don't want to see it. Me too, French said. The men straggled out, murmuring. Peterson lingered at the door. He was talking to me about myths, he said. It wouldn't hurt anyone. He went outside. Franco walked toward the wub. The wub looked up slowly. It swallowed. A very foolish thing, it said. I am sorry that you want to do it. There was a parable that your saviour related. It stopped, staring at the gun. Can you look me in the eye and do it? The wub said. Can you do that? The captain gazed down. I can look you in the eye, he said. Back on the farm we had hogs, dirty razorback hogs. I can do it. Staring down at the wub, into the gleaming moist eyes, he pressed the trigger. The taste was excellent. They sat glumly around the table, some of them hardly eating at all. The only one who seemed to be enjoying himself was Captain Franco. More? He said, looking around. More. And some wine, perhaps. Not me, French said. I think I'll go back to the chart room. Me too. Jones stood up, pushing his chair back. I'll see you later. The captain watched them go. Some of the others excused themselves. What do you suppose the matter is? The captain said. He turned to Peterson. Peterson sat staring down at his plate, at the potatoes, the green peas, and the thick slab of tender, warm meat. He opened his mouth. No sound came. The captain put his hand on Peterson's shoulder. It's only organic matter now, he said. The life essence is gone. He ate, spooning up the gravy with some bread. I, myself, love to eat. It is one of the greatest things that a living creature can enjoy. Eating, resting, meditation, discussing things. Peterson nodded. 2 more men got up and went out. The captain drank some water and sighed. Well, he said, I must say that this was a very enjoyable meal. All the reports I'd heard were quite true. The taste of wub, very fine. But I was prevented from enjoying this pleasure in times past. He dabbed at his lips with his napkin and leaned back in his chair. Peterson stared dejectedly at the table. The captain watched him intently. He leaned over. Come, come, he said. Cheer up. Let's discuss things. He smiled. As I was saying before I was interrupted, the role of Odysseus in the myths. Peterson jerked up, staring. To go on, the captain said. Odysseus, as I understand him.
Okay, I'll tell you what I think of Beyond Lies the Web. I think this is a really strange story. The ending happened so quickly and I was very confused. I felt really bad for the Wub, and also I don't know what his motives were. What did he think was going to happen when he got on the ship?
Yes, there's a lot to unpick, isn't there, in this one?
So many questions.
Also, why a wub? Did he just think, oh, I need a word? What's a word? A wub.
I guess. Maybe it's like because he just dies and gets eaten, so it's like wop wop wop.
I didn't think of that, but yeah, good point.
That seems as good an explanation as any.
It's probably the best we're gonna get.
How do they have a concept of Catholicism on Mars? Anyway.
What?
He says, the wub says that we're very Catholic. Tolerant, eclectic Catholic. We live and let live. Since when have the Catholics ever let anything live and let live? I'm so confused.
I think there might be something wrong with the Wub's telepathic
Quite possibly.
communication. It was a very strange way to put that.
Yes. Because, regardless of the Wub's telepathy, there's still an actual, presumably non-Martian writing it.
I mean, maybe things are different in the future.
More Catholic.
Well, maybe. I guess Philip K. Dick didn't know.
I was going to say, were you guys on the side of the Wub?
Yes, I think so. He seems like he's just trying to live and have a cool time and talk about philosophy and stuff. He's not really hurting anyone.
Yeah, I would agree.
Bit where even when the Wub wasn't talking and they were like pulling at its hair or something and it cried made me go, no, I don't like this. Don't torture this poor creature. I guess because when something shows emotion, you're more likely to feel like a sympathy for it, maybe. I don't know. That bit really got me like, leave the Wub alone. I want to protect it. Even if it is ugly or whatever.
Yeah.
Is this not a subversion of beauty equals good, Simone?
I mean, I would debate on if the Wub is good. It does, do whatever it does at the end.
Well, yeah, it takes over a guy's brain, but he kind of deserved it.
I mean, he did, but that doesn't make it good.
Fair.
How do we know that wasn't the Wub's plan from the very beginning?
Exactly. It can read minds. It knew what they were intending before itself led on the spaceship. And that's not to, victim blame the Wub or anything, but, and then locals were awfully eager to get rid of the thing.
I think only Peterson really was like, no, don't do it. But then they didn't want to watch him kill it, and then they didn't want to eat it. So...
Yeah. I think we're supposed to be on the side of the Wub, otherwise the ending wouldn't be a bit of a twist, would it? Or horrifying.
Yeah.
In the same way.
Maybe the way you read the ending depends on whether you think the captain deserved it or not.
When he did get consumed by the Wub after consuming the Wub.
There's going to be some very strange sentences in this episode. So the tone of this story, I don't know how is it funny? Is it horrifying? Is it kind of both? I like some of the stuff the wub says is quite funny. Like I was sort of going, oh yeah, okay, and kind of laughing at it, and then like they decide to eat it, and then you get the end where they eat the captain instead. What even is this? What do you think that it matters that the tone is a bit inconsistent, or do you think that it adds to the
I don't know, sometimes I feel like we're more lenient on classic authors. Like, if we started out with the beginning, what the hell is an optus? It's never mentioned again.
I know. The start makes no sense.
Like, you could have just completely cut the first paragraph and it would probably be a stronger story. It just gives you no context for anything whatsoever.
It gives you no, like, I guess, exposition or backstory. It just puts things on the page as they are happening.
But no, I do think it's funny. I liked the part where it was started talking and was like, really, we should talk about something else. And you're like, what? It's hilarious.
Yeah, there's like, there must be a man inside it.
Yeah. He's so formal in the way he's like, I disagree. I can see you and I, Captain, are going to disagree or something like that.
Yeah. I can see that you and I do not agree on some basic issues.
Yeah, that's it. Just is a comic image to think of this big ugly creature having this quite formal cadence to the way he talks.
I enjoy it.
So what was your like overall emotion? Was it like the both, or was it this was a funny story or this was a horrifying story?
I think it's funny. It's a bit weird and gets into some dark places. But then I think the ending is almost, even though it's quite sinister, it's almost a catharsis because you're like, the wub got his way in the end. So I think overall it's a funny story. It has an optimistic ending. It has kind of undertones that are a bit darker.
Has definite horror undertones to me, but I did find it amusing.
Cool. Okay. I think it's both. I was having a good time, and then the last like part of the story was just horrifying. But overall, I think that maybe the funny wins out. It's kind of funny that he just you know it's the wub because he just starts talking about, is it Odysseus again or something?
Picking up the conversation.
It's quite a good way to reveal who he is. I did like that.
Yeah.
So what is this wub doing? What are its motivations? Do you think it just wanted a free spaceship ride, or?
Okay. I think the wub is a soul-hopping spirit that was looking for its next target.
Yeah, I could see that.
Maybe the wub's whole motivation was to eat itself.
I mean, yeah, that is an argument. Its motivation is pleasure. Be that food, be that...
I mean, he says he's heard that it tastes pretty good.
And denied it the pleasure before or something, which sounded quite sinister.
I mean, there's the idea, isn't it, that they're all travelling home, which would link with the Odyssey thing. So maybe the wub originally from Earth a very long time ago and is trying to get home. Not that Philip K. Dick gives me anything to support this view, but, he doesn't give me anything to support what the wub's motivation actually is anyway, so I suppose all we can do is wonder.
I find that quite fun, though, when there's a lot to wonder about.
Isn't the point of the story that it's some strange alien being and we can't really understand how intelligent it is or what it's capable of?
That is also a decent point, but my hubris argues against it.
So why do you think the wub is talking about all these sort of mythological figures and things? Is it just like that kind of stuff, or is it like does it have some deeper meaning? I'm not very familiar with any of the myths it mentions, so...
Partially, at least, it's to make the wub seem like a kind of person who you would consider intelligent.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I guess we think of appreciation of art as a very human thing almost.
And I think there's the connecting power of stories because it's talking about how the myths are the same across many species, so maybe it's trying to kind of show that they're not so different either if they've got the same stories.
Yeah, so it's like a bit of common ground.
Yeah.
Don't eat me, we're the same.
I suppose he probably picked this particular heroic figure, Odysseus, for some intelligent reason. Apparently he was some kind of a bit of a trickster, which seems to fit.
Greek mythology, the Odyssey follows him. After the Trojan War, he pissed off Poseidon, and it took him 10 years to get home. So he runs into people like Cyclops and Circe and various things like that. So it's the idea of, I guess, a long voyage home, which is what the characters are also doing. Is they're trying to get home.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So the story, I guess, relies heavily on dialogue. There's a lot of different people talking at different times. Once we realize the web talks, our perception, I think, changes. It's very like clever in the way it uses dialogue, I think. Agree with that, or do you think that the dialogue was a bit clumsy and clunky? Like, how did you feel about it?
I mean, I didn't personally find that it zinged off the page, but it kind of fits the characters of the wub as kind of slow and ponderous. So maybe that was the point. Like, the idea behind the dialogue was more interesting to me than the dialogue itself.
I think the
Yeah.
dialogue tries pretty hard to be somewhat realistic and portray how people would react in that kind of situation. It's not about the people, really.
Isn't it? To a certain extent, it's about the choice, isn't it, of eating a sentient creature and what that will do to you. Binaries of the self and the other, and who gets to eat, who doesn't get to eat, which is all about power.
Yeah, but I'm saying I think the particular characters in the story aren't that important aside from the web itself. They aren't characterized particularly strongly. I think they're mostly supposed to be a stand-in for humanity.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So you've got your captain guys who are like, heck yeah, I'm going to eat the wub. And then your Peterson guys who are like, we can't eat him. He likes Odysseus.
Exactly.
Okay. I quite like this scenes where like you get a lot of talking at once, kind of evoke the kind of mood of the room and the way the crew are feeling. I thought that was quite cool because it sort of changes. Like at one point they're all in favor of, yeah, let's eat the wub. And then towards the end they're like, nah, we don't want to eat the wub.
Yeah.
We can't be
Do you
here
have
anymore.
their actual opinion, or do you reckon the wub is affecting them?
That's an interesting thought.
I think it must be their actual opinions because I think our opinions and the audience, as the audience, are also changing in that direction, right?
That's true. I mean, as the wub gives us more reasons not to eat it.
Have you got any tips on using dialogue effectively in stories, or maybe like what's your favorite way to use dialogue?
I think the best dialogue shows it doesn't just progress the plot, it says something about the character without saying something. You know what I mean? Got to think about the way the character would try and portray what they're trying to say, but without just being blunt about it. There's a little bit of misdirection involved because whenever you say something, you don't really say what you want. You try and finagle your way into people's brains. somewhat
Even
indirectly.
when you're being direct, there's 3 different layers of the iceberg beneath it
Yeah.
of what you want out of any given scene.
So, how far down the iceberg do you think we should go? Would going too many layers down make the dialogue incomprehensible? Is there like a nice level where you're not being outright and being too complicated?
No, I mean, of course, there's always going to be. You might wonder if you build in layers too deep, no one's going to notice this, right? But sometimes that's still useful to have as a writer because it helps you make sure that your characters are feeling consistent and you understand them properly.
Do you think readers might subconsciously pick up on those things even if they're not obvious?
Yeah.
Yeah, because readers read into things as well, even if it's not shown on the page. I mean, maybe not all readers, but certainly a lot of people will pick up on like subtext or fill in the gaps to a certain extent of things that you don't say. Particularly because if we're very empathetic as people, we can picture emotions and how we might react in certain circumstances, even if the character is not outright stating something.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of see for this story where we've tried to fill in the gaps as readers, being like, the heck is the web doing? What is going on here? Because those questions are all left open. I like dialogue to have more than one purpose, to establish character and then what's going on in the scene, and then maybe relationship stuff in there as well. If you can make it do all those things at once, that'll be great.
Because if it's not furthering character, plot, or both, what's it doing in your story? Why you wouldn't typically have, like, you know, the highs and the hellos unless someone's voice is choking on hello because it's been so long since they saw that person. You know, why the beginning of the story pisses me off with the dialogue. Because again, that first scene, what is it doing? It just doesn't make any sense. Unless it's like to kind of show the larger, you know, conquering of not just the wub but the planet that they're taking the wub from.
I thought it might be to kind of try and hint that the captain is a douche early on, because it sounds like he's been up to something suspicious.
You know, so we're set up to not be on his side.
Yeah.
He's set up as someone quite, yes, greedy.
Some of the stuff about food is like very strange. Would you really keep livestock alive on a spaceship?
So I guess you're saying you'd freeze it?
I don't think the food is particularly great on any spaceship. It seems to kind of be a recurring theme in sci-fi. We can imagine fantasy worlds, but we can't imagine decent food in the sky.
I did see what astronauts have when they're in space, and it's like liquid food, and it looks very disgusting.
Probably go for a bit of wub then.
Yeah, they might. They might very well.
I think they'd wub it.
Amazing. Do you like the ending, and do you think there is enough to set it up?
Yes.
I like the ending. I probably would find the story a bit boring without that ending, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
if it
we've
was-
seen people debating for their life before. People who then end up, mind controlling the person. That's a nice twist. I think it's a tale about the captain's hubris and the danger of, I guess, assuming your own superiority over creatures that you view as inferior just because they look different to you.
Yeah.
It's a horror. I feel like the captain's in a horror story, but doesn't know he's in a horror story. They think they're in a comedy, but they're not.
I like that take. It's quite cool.
The wub is genre savvy.
Yeah, the wub knows what it's doing. I thought the ending could have maybe done with something else to set it up, rather than just and then the wub throws someone, so crazy mind powers.
I thought there was something with Peterson, because it seems like he changes his mind awfully quick, right?
That's true. I just thought he was getting to sympathize with the wub through his love of philosophy, not because of mind control powers, but maybe you're right, and it is mind control powers.
I mean, it sets up that he's telepathic, and then it sets up that he freezes the captain at the door somehow. I feel like that's enough.
Yeah, and that it reading their minds, like it's accessing the semantic section to talk, which implies that it can kind of go to all of the other ones as well.
All right, last question. Do you think the crew will eventually figure out that their captain is now the wub? Do you think anyone apart from Peterson will figure it out?
Is he not going to tell him?
Well, I don't know if I would, if I was the wub.
No, I meant Pearson.
He has mind control powers. The wub could do what he wants.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's premeditated on the web side, given, so it's not going to be, taken over so easily. Like the bit when he's talking in the captain's cabin, and the captain's kind of questioning on what exactly his telepathic powers are, and the wub is very absent in their response and saying a few odds and ends, which is absolutely not, oh, I can take over your soul and body. While looking around at the captain's apartment, therefore changing the topic to what a nice place they have, which suggests that he's kind of silently poaching it. Thinking, you know what, this is a nice apartment. I think I'd like it.
Cunning wub is
I don't
cunning.
think the wub's going to be that easily taken down the second time, even if they figure it out. And what are they going to do? Kill him? What if he jumps body again? They already tried that route.
That's true. So basically, it's up to him to decide whether he wants to rule as a dictator or stealthily from the shadows.
Yeah, the wub doesn't seem silly to me. I think he'll assume the captain's identity.
And then he'll just raise Peterson's brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to ask or talk about?
I said earlier that it was the captain that said he hadn't enjoyed the taste of wub. I was just looking at the ending, and it's definitely the wub as captain saying that, which is suggesting that the wub is a very cannibalistic creature. Would kill its own kind if it could.
Maybe its body, that pig-like body, is not the actual body of the wub.
I feel like it can't be.
It has no body. It is just a soul somehow.
Like in Midnight, but in Doctor Who. Let's talk about Philip K. Dick. He is really well known as a sci-fi author. A lot of movies have been based on his work, including Blade Runner and Minority Report and Total Recall.
All of them great.
His most well-known stories are probably The Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, which was what Blade Runner was based on, and The Man in the High Castle, which had an Amazon series that's been pretty successful, though I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it's any good, which I believe is based on an alternate history where the Germans won World War II. He was a strange guy. He was married 5 times, which to me seems excessive, but I guess it's just how he be. He was a heavy drug user, and he wrote all his books before 1970 while on amphetamines. Did I say that right?
Yes.
So, as he said, in 1977, A Scanner Darkly was the first complete novel I had written without speed. So I think this might explain some of the strangeness of his work.
Makes sense.
He also, I think this was kind of later on in his life, he had some really strange hallucinations, probably from using so many drugs. And at one point, he claimed he was living 2 parallel lives, one as himself, Philip K. Dick, and one as Thomas, a Christian persecuted by Romans in the 1st century AD, which was an extension of the fact that he believed time had stopped we were all actually living in Rome, and that something he called the vast active living intelligence system had communicated with people in order to impeach President Nixon, who was really the Emperor of Rome. I was reading this on Wikipedia trying to untangle it all in my head, and I was like, he thought, what? It doesn't make much sense to me, but
It's basically the Matrix, except it's Rome.
you're right. Yeah, he thought we were living in the Matrix, except that the Romans invented it. He died 4 months before the release of Blade Runner, which was very sad because he didn't see what a success it was.
Maybe if he hadn't died, it wouldn't have been a success.
Or maybe.
I also can't believe that they changed the title.
What? Wait.
I know, right? It's such a great title.
Do androids dream of electric sheep? We'll never know. I have read it. I don't
Ugh.
know if it answers the question.
God damn.
I think it's more of a philosophical question.
Number one rule of writing: answer your main question.
I don't remember. It probably did at some point.
I haven't read it, so I don't know. Oh,
It was a very strange book, but it's very good. It's just
think-
kind of like Blade Runner. It's just a bunch of people having an existential crisis about like who is an android and who isn't.
that makes sense. So yeah, a brief look at Philip K. Dick.
I've read a few of his books. They're all very strange, and some of them don't really make sense. But this story might be my favorite of his works, honestly, because it made me laugh. I could understand it.
Well, being able to understand something is always a good start.
To be fair, I was quite young. Very hard to pin down what that actual plot was sometimes, which makes it even worse.
God.
Yeah. They're very different though, because that was one of them that I read. I think it was Ubik. I found very confusing because it was all about people being in different realities or something weird. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was better, but it's also the kind of book that you have to like properly think about it. Like you might have to read it twice.
I feel like a part of my brain hates anything I have to read twice. And I know that's a very lazy elitist, demanding everything be accessible, which it shouldn't be. And I have very strong feelings that everything doesn't need to be for laymen, and it's important to have to think about things. But also,
I mean, I thought popular opinion agreed with you, but everyone seems to love House of Leaves, so I don't know what's up with that.
yeah, but that's just so obscure. It's like it's more doing a puzzle than it is reading a book. Like, House of Leaves isn't pretending to have a coherent plot. The whole point of House of Leaves is all the different ways we can tell stories and read into stories and interpretive reader communities. I wrote an essay on this, but anyway.
I should have known.
Matt, would you rather read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep or watch Blade Runner?
These Blade Runner's over in like 2 hours.
Wow. I think Simone would rather do neither. You have to pay her.
I'm told it's absolutely brilliant and I should rewatch it, but you know. Sorry. What would you prefer, Matt?
They're good in different ways. I've got to respect the book as a writer.
Hmm.
And it's clearer about, well, the film is slightly easier to understand, but the book gets the main message across better. And also the film doesn't have any electric sheep in it, which is just ludicrous.
Okay.
You've got to at least have an electric sheep, come on.
You do.
Yeah. That sounds quite cute.
Yeah, I think it's some kind of metaphor for, oh, even the sheep are androids.
Just think of Mareep from Pokemon.
Yeah.
So, thank you for listening. Please leave a comment on our website to let us know what you thought. You can also find all our previous short stories and episodes. We'll be back with another story next week. Bye!